would want all our audiences to know about you being a true polyglot. So please just, enlighten us about how many languages you speak. And it would be great if you could speak, like one sentence in each language. I think it'll be really interesting to hear that.
Alright, so asko ami khushize ami tomaloke record koram, which means I'm happy that I'm recording with you. In Italian, the same sentence would be sono contenta di fare la registrazione con te. English, there is no need to say it. In French, it would be je suis très contente d'être avec toi aujourd'hui. In Spanish, I think you would say yo estoy contenta de estar contigo.
Okay, wow. Hi, Urmi. Thank you so much for being our first guest on Speakeasy Studio. I have had the opportunity to go on other people's podcasts, but you are the first guest that I invited. There's so many things I want to talk with you and to hear from you and learn from you as well. So, what I would like is a great introduction from yourself about who you are, what do you do, and just tell us. Just, I'm ready to my mind to be blown. Please, the floor is all yours.
Yes, so my name is Urmi. I am based in Montreal. I work in the financial sector, but as I like to tell people, I also have my 5 to 9 where I do a bunch of other things. I'm a self-published author, speaker, YouTuber, female mentor, and advocate of women's empowerment. I am part of an organization called Women in Leadership where I run the Montreal chapter as a co-chair with other women. And I am part of another organization called Dress for Success as a mentor. And last but not least, I'm also a big passionate of language learning. I always say I know almost 5 languages, Spanish being the almost 5, which I hope it's one day it's going to become full. And that's pretty much about it.
Well, you said that's pretty much that about it, but it looks like a very long list. I was aware of the WIL, the Women in Leadership. You also mentioned something after that. Was that Dress for a Cause or something?
Dress for Success.
Dress for Success. Okay, wow. That sounds really interesting as well. Your 5 to 9 is, I'm sure, more busy and keeps you more occupied than your everyday 9 to 5. I also, of course, wanted to talk to you about your self-published author experience as well. But before we start any of that,
I speak almost 5 languages, Bengali being my mother tongue, Italian being my second language, but I always say it's my adopted mother tongue because I started to use it right when I was a kid. There is English, of course, that I had to learn at school. There is French that I had to learn at school, but I also live in Montreal, so it's a bilingual city, so you really need to navigate with 2 languages. And then there's Spanish, which is the language that I chose to learn in university. Yeah. Now, I can tell you something in each of the languages. Okay. So let's start with Bengali. I will tell you. Asko ami khushize ami tomaloke record koram, which means I'm happy that I'm recording with you. In Italian, the same sentence would be sono contenta di fare la registrazione con te. English, there is no need to say it. In French, it would be je suis très contente d'être avec toi aujourd'hui. In Spanish, I think you would say yo estoy contenta de estar contigo.
Okay, wow, okay. They all sound so melodious, and all of them kind of have their own rhythm. Now I want to know from you that you speak so many languages. How do you feel? Like, how is your mind code switching, or how was it code switching when you were growing up? So I would like to know a little about your initial few years in Italy, going to Italian school, speaking Bengali, because I read your post about how you had like a whole different identity at home with language and culture, and you had like a separate identity in school and outside of home. So how did that shape, and also how did you absorb all these languages? So please kind of enlighten us on that.
So it's interesting that you're saying that because so I grew up basically speaking Bengali at home. That was the language my parents taught me. And then in Italy, of course, when I went to Italian school, all of my friends were Italian. So there was the Italian that was like a big part of my life. And then I brought it at home. So we started to use both languages. So with my sister, I would speak in Italian, which I still do. With my cousin, I would speak in Italian. With my parents, I would speak Bengali. But then I started to switch to Italian. And sometimes it was a mix between the 2 languages. And it wasn't so hard when I was growing up when it came to like switching the languages, but I think it became harder when I moved to Montreal, because in Montreal it's very common that you are using both English and French in the same sentence. But what's funnier is that sometimes you're like speaking in French and you throw like an English word, or you do like vice versa, and that is a little bit more complicated sometimes, because maybe you want to say something in French but the word just comes to you in English, and so it's very common in that sense. But I think for me what was the hardest was when I had to learn Spanish, and I was so struggling with like switching to Spanish. I think because French was my last language, my first language before I got to learn Spanish, what happened is I would just like write essays, but they were all like they would have like French words, and I was not aware of it.
Okay.
That was so hard for me to like switch, even mentally, like even in my brain. I think my brain was not just capable of switching to Spanish.
Okay.
So now like I take Spanish classes, but what I do is that before taking the Spanish class, I'm watching a video in Spanish, so that like my brain is like pre-prepared.
Yeah. It's like a pre-workout.
That's it. Yes.
Can I just ask you something? So sorry to interject, but why do you think that you're having this, or like a little bit of a challenge in learning Spanish? I would like to think that they mostly come from the same Latin base, right? What do you think, according to you, that little challenge for you is?
I think it's probably because they all sound so similar.
Okay.
And they all share the same base. And someone was telling me once that when you are learning a new language, you tend to speak the languages you have learned last. Like that comes way too often in when you're speaking the newest language. And I think that's probably one of the reasons. It's just sometimes it gets really complicated. Yes, they do share the same base Latin languages, and it was easier for me. For me to learn Spanish, it was easy and still is. But I think the French just comes automatically when I'm trying to speak Spanish.
You know, I was very surprised when you got in touch with me and you see with Montreal, right? Because as Indians, I also moved to Toronto for 5 years. So that is the path we take. When we move, we obviously go to an Anglophone kind of city because, where we know we'll be, okay with the language. So Vancouver, Toronto, the east coast of America. How did you choose Montreal? Because you said you speak French, but I visited Montreal. And for people who are not aware, Quebec is a primarily French speaking province of Canada. So, like you said, all official work also gets done in French. How do you take that move? Because, talking another language just, as a thing with friends or a social activity, I think is great. But to take it up as your work and your professional language, how did you choose that?
Look, I think so. I moved to Montreal for personal reasons, and let me tell you this. And this was something that I was not aware of, was how French it is. But I was not even aware that there was such thing as like Quebecois French.
Correct,
like I knew that I only knew there was French from France, not Quebecois French. And then I became very aware that there are so many accents even in the French language, because you have the Algerian French, the Moroccan one. You have also like from other parts like Belgium, for instance, and they all have different accents, but I was not aware of that before moving to Canada. Like I thought there was only one universal language. And so when I came here, it was so funny because I think like you probably have experienced people come and approach you and say, oh, bonjour, hi, and everything is in both languages, and then it's up to you to choose the language that you want to be served in. But I would tell people, yeah, I can speak it, but I really have struggled because the Quebecois was not something familiar to me. Like I really could not get over with the pronunciation and so forth. And so what happened is I actually worked like actively to make sure that I was not losing it, because I had the base, I knew how to speak it and everything. And then I gave myself this objective that I'm going to make sure that I become this fluent to the point that I can actually work in a French environment. So I do work in a French environment, but it was like a continuous work that I had to do, like listening to podcasts, watching news in French Quebecois.
Okay.
doing conversation with friends, and I would basically like meet with some of my co-workers who were from France, of course, and I would just be like, okay, let's just have a conversation in French. I would tell you about my day. We would just always talk in French, and now I do have friends with who I only speak French, and at work I do have to use French on a regular basis. Yeah, but I do like Montreal because of that French environment, which reminds me of the European vibe that I grew up with.
That's true, absolutely. The Quebec City also, I think it was so quaint. It looked like a cute little small European town. So now that you're speaking, I have a question. When I have to work, right, or if I go and put on my computer on, though I am fluent in reading Hindi, Marathi as well, which are local Indian languages, I can read a newspaper also. But if you give me two articles, one in English, one in Hindi, the Hindi one is really going to tax my brain because I know how to read it. My speed is going to be so much slower. I will have to focus on the words. Where in English, my brain just sees it and it kind of deciphers what is written in a paragraph. Does that happen with you in French? Because you're a CFA. I want to know, how do you manage these numbers and your account sheets and those kind of things in French?
I think for me, what happened is because I did my university in Montreal, and it was mainly in English. I went to Concordia; it was just an English, it's an English university. Everything that I've done in finance was in English, and when I first started to work, of course, I worked in English environments, and then I was like, this is time to switch. And when I went to the French environment, there were words that I had to learn because I was not familiar with those financial words, like how to say registered retirement accounts, tax-free savings accounts, like those things. I really had to pick them up and learn them on the go, learn them as I was doing the job. That's how I did it. And then I started to maybe read articles and be familiar with certain words and terminology, but it was something that I had to learn on the job. And it wasn't something that was taught to me at school, because you don't take, unless you take a French class, but this it's not part of the curriculum in university. So I had to get used to that. Yes.
Wow, so you actively put so much effort from your end, right, to do it in French. It's not something for you that you were like, oh, I just know exactly what to do. Like you said, learning the Quebecois French. Again, for people who are not aware, Quebecois French is a term that people use for the French that's spoken in the Quebec province. That is because it's not the same as the French spoken in Europe. And I think there's a debate out there where people claim that the Quebecois French is the original, genuine French, and some people feel like the French spoken in the rest of the world right now is the one. So I think that is always a debate from what I heard from Quebecois at my workplace. Tell me this, now that since this podcast is going to be watched by a lot of Indians, and I feel like a lot of Indians have this trepidation when it comes to English, right? Because though English, of course, is widely spoken and most of our education is done in English as well, I feel like a lot of adult learners hesitate from taking that step. So I want to know your experience, because you were growing up in such a mixed environment. How did English fit in a place like Italy and for you?
Okay, let me tell you this, because when I took English classes back in Italy, I studied from the age of 8 years old.
Okay.
But it was really basic things. Literally they teach you basic words. And then I moved to the north of Italy. I went to Milan.
Okay.
And even there, it was really basic things. And then my parents and I, we moved to the UK for a year.
Oh.
And that's when it hit me. I think I really had to struggle speaking to people, because I just felt like I did not have any vocabulary. I had no knowledge of speaking in English, and they put me into this special class for foreigners or immigrants who are supposed to be learning English. And that's when I started to pick up words and be able to use them and be able to speak it. So that was when I was really immersed in the English environment, and it was the British one that I was learning.
Correct.
And then I came back to Italy after 1 year, and then I had this professor who was so tough. So she made sure that we learned English from A to Z. So she would just talk to us in English. We would have conversation with native speakers in English. She would make us watch movies. She would make us listen to English songs. So we would print out the lyrics of our favorite songs, analyze it, and check what they were saying. And then what happened is, when I was a kid, I used to watch MTV. Big fan of it. I know that it's no longer exists.
Sad, right? Sad.
Yeah, I know. It's part of our generation.
Absolutely.
And my teenagehood. So then what happened is, I used to watch MTV there was no tomorrow, and I would watch these American shows, and often they were not translated in Italian. Like there was the subtitles in Italian, and then they would speak in English, and I would just watch it and be like, oh, I want to have the American accent. So I worked so hard to get the American accent because I felt like it sounded so cool.
Right.
And then when I was in high school, I was able to like really like be able to speak it, which is why like I think I was like quite fluent in English. And then when I moved to Montreal, I suddenly realized that they also have an accent in like Canada. There's a Canadian accent.
Absolutely.
There's American accent. Then I realized there was South African accent. I was like, what the hell? Australian accent, British, Scottish, Irish. I was like so not aware. I think I was just living in my bubble thinking there was again one accent for like every single language.
The American accent is the accent.
Exactly. So I just became much more aware, and I think I started to like pay attention a lot with the different accents and try to recognize them, because I don't think it's like when you grow up just learning one accent, you only think that's the way, but then you realize there are so many different accents out there, even in English. And we have the same thing in Italian too. There's so many accents. Like if you go in the south, it's one type of accent. If you go to the north, it's another type of accent. And so that was interesting.
Yeah, that's so good you bring it up. You know why? Because I don't know if you've heard this term, but this is very widely used in India. It's called the MTI, which is your mother tongue influence, right? Because in India also, as you know, we all speak such varied languages, and that has a focus on our English. So if you're from the southern states, you will speak English a certain way. So you can almost hear someone speak and go like, oh, I think she's from the northern part of India, right? Like you're talking with Italy, with Italian. Do you think you face that with English as well? Because your English was taught to you in Italy. Before you went to UK, do you think you learned English the right way, or it was like the way it was taught internationally?
So I think, here's the thing. When I was in the UK, I think I learned the British one, especially when it came to certain words. And then when I came to Montreal, I feel like I picked up on other words. Like for instance, in Canada, we say washroom, to go to the washroom, but I think in the States they say bathroom or toilet. I forgot what it was.
They say restroom at some places, they say bathroom in some places. Then
there you go. Yeah, there you go. So I know, and I'm aware of that whenever I'm traveling and going to the States. When I say washroom, people are just staring at me and probably wondering, okay, this one is from Canada, who's like using washrooms. That's when I'm like aware that I think I picked up more certain words from the local places, like in like Montreal. But I do think that I was exposed to like different kinds of English. And I think when I'm speaking in English, there is my Italian side that comes out, like my Italian accent that comes out. Yeah.
You also mentioned that your teacher that you had in Italy, who was like really like strict and she was so good in English, she told you like, helped you and forced you kind of guys, like just focus on speaking. A lot of Indians who are learning English, right, they struggle with this. They always complain that lately that they don't like the content on TV, they don't like audiobooks. So I know that we grew up in the generation of MTV and VH1 because that is when I started seeing English content as well. Obviously, like a lot of other, Asians at least, I did grow up watching Friends a lot. So that was my idea of America. Friends living together, having pizzas for dinner, the accent and everything. It kind of set an idea in my head.
Yeah.
But a lot of people now lately, I feel, especially adult learners, they struggle with it. Do you have any advice for them? Like, do you think that this helped you a lot in terms of watching, viewing, and hearing?
Yeah, because I used to watch these specific American shows in the native language, and I think I picked up through my listening. And I think that's what my teacher was trying to do, because it's one thing to speak, which comes really easy if you know the different expression and words, but it's another thing to understand. And I think it's more important to understand what the other person is saying, and that it comes with active work.
Yes.
And so it's so funny that you mentioned Friends, because I used to watch Friends in Italian. And the jokes would not come out the same. So I never quite understood the jokes. So now I watch Friends during the pandemic, like from the beginning. And I feel like I finally understood the jokes. But at the beginning, I feel like when you translate something that is like in the original language in a translated language, it does not come out the same way.
Yes.
And And I think it's always good to like listen to something in the native language, because then you get to feel up the natural way of speaking. Because it's one thing to like write something which you write in proper English, and it's another thing to like speak it.
True.
And so I do think that watching stuff always helps. Now people have Netflix available, and I think Netflix is quite helpful when it comes to learning English. And you can choose your favorite TV shows to watch,
Absolutely.
TV show to watch. You can put subtitles. You can remove them. And I think even YouTube has very interesting content. Like you can watch an interview of your favorite celebrity, and you can put the subtitles on. You can. One thing that I always suggest is like you first listen to it with no subtitles and maybe make notes,
Yeah.
because we used to like transcribe everything.
Correct.
And then you just put back the subtitles and be like, okay, did I catch the words or
Yeah.
not? Yeah.
That's a good idea. I tell people the same thing, a lot of learners, that play the subtitle once, because there's no point if you're not understanding anything. Play the subtitles, get an idea of what they're saying, then hear it without the subtitles and see if it's making sense. And you know what? You hit the nail on the head. I keep telling that I think this is my motto. Everybody who asks me what is the holy grail of learning English, I tell them it's listening and understanding more than
Yeah.
speaking. And I think that we're all as learners in such a rush to speak, right? But if you're not a good listener, you are going to kind of fail as an audience or a speaker. And I feel
Yeah.
like that is where, right, people go like, yeah, but I want to speak this way. Yeah, but I think learning and hearing, right, listening is so important.
Yes, it's very important, especially when you come across to so many accents. Like I feel like, because my parents now they live in the UK, so when I go and visit them, I get exposed to so many ways of speaking English. So
Correct.
there is the British from Birmingham, Manchester, London. Let me tell you this, I have a hard time understanding some of the people.
Okay, some I agree. My brother lives in London, so when I go visit them, London seems fine. But my sister-in-law, her family is from the northern part of England, very close to Scotland, in fact. So when we visited them for Christmas, we were having like a nice Boxing Day lunch, and there were like two girls or something were talking, and they were like laughing or something. I am not exaggerating with me. I could not catch one sentence. Yeah, maybe it was also the slang terms they were using, the accent, the intonation. I was like, what are they saying? And then my sister-in-law told me that apparently that accent is called the Geordie accent. And England, being such a small country, is so divided in accents. They have a Mancunian accent for people from Manchester. So you're right. If you go to big cities, you will hear more plain English. But the minute you go to other cities, you will just start to hear their local slang as well.
Yeah, and I think it's also the same thing in the States. Like, of course, like if you go to New York, you can hear one type of accent. But then I feel like if you go, let's say, to Texas, Colorado, like you hear already like a different kind of accent, which
The
is
Midwestern, yeah, kind of heavy
Yeah.
accent, yes.
Yeah, and I find this so interesting.
Okay, so to this that we've spoken about accents right now, I do want to also talk about your podcast. I think this is a great segue into it. Please tell us something about your podcast, because it sounds really interesting. And for somebody who has been a woman of color living in a different country, who lived there for 5 years, I know that we all face some challenges, some kind, prejudices, a lot of, preconceived notions. So please enlighten us about what is that about and how enriching has it been for you?
Yeah, so my podcast is called Stories Beyond Borders, and I pretty much started like a year ago.
Okay.
And it's basically stories of immigration. I am an immigrant myself, so were my parents, and I started it because of that. I think sometimes we don't give enough credit to people who are moving around and moving to a new country, and the sacrifices and the challenges that come with it. Like I remember when my parents moved to Italy, they had no relationship with Italy.
Correct.
They did not know the language. They didn't know anyone. They literally started from scratch. And I'm an immigrant myself, but I do have connections here. Like I know how to navigate this train, a new place.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I want to invite people and talk about their immigration stories. And there's always, I would say, a common thread. We all face challenges when it comes to integrating, feeling like you don't belong, feeling like you don't fit, feeling like you have to shrink. But I think it's also a reminder that you don't forget your origins, and that you stay true to yourself and be your authentic self. So I have those kind of conversation in the podcast.
Have you Are you able to resonate with a lot of those women who come on your podcast? Do you think that, like you said, it's a common thread? You resonate with a lot what they say?
Yeah, I do resonate with a lot of them, especially like there's this other guest that I invited. She is Pakistani Canadian.
Okay.
And she's also a published author. She wrote the book The Confessions of a Brown Girl. I don't know if you have ever read it.
No, I haven't. Okay. I'll look into it.
It's such a good book, and I know when I invited her, like I could resonate a lot with her. And I also invited, oh my gosh, I don't know if you know this person. I also invited this she's a movie writer, she's a director who lives in Montreal.
Okay.
And she did the movie Calorie. Did you watch it?
Which movie? Calorie?
No. Calorie.
No,
like calorie. You know when you eat, you have calories.
Oh, okay. No, I don't think I heard about it. What's the director writer's name?
I forgot the name right now.
Okay, no, that's not okay. But yeah, tell me about it. How was the conversation with them?
So what was interesting about her story is that she basically like moved probably in the 60s or in the 70s, and she was talking about her experience going to school in Canada.
Okay.
And she was like, there were not that many people that looked like me around me. Even though she's much older than me, I just felt that it was interesting to see how my story was also very similar to hers.
Yeah.
Because when I went to school to Italy, there was no one that looked like me. There was not even one person from like another country. Forget about people from Bangladesh. There's not even one person from another place.
Correct.
So you feel like you're in the odd place, you don't belong there, you're misplaced. And she told me she felt the same way too. And so I felt it was interesting, and I could resonate a lot with her story. And what's so interesting about some of these stories is that even when we go back, let's say, to some of these places, like let's say I go back to Bangladesh, for instance, sometimes you even there you feel like you're misplaced because you are so used to like living in the Western world that even that does not feel like it's part of you. And so it's interesting how everyone like shares the same kind of story but in different ways.
Yes, and like you said, like somebody who went in the 70s also experienced something so similar to what you experienced. That means even in the last 40-50 years, not much change has come. I mean, that disassociation sometimes with who you are and the sense of belonging still prevails. Yes,
and I think a lot of the time we feel very lost. We feel like, okay, this is probably not the place where I should be. I don't know. There is no one that looks like me, and you feel like you're living in between. Because maybe one side of you is trying to integrate and sound or be the most Western possible. And then when you go home, you're reminded that, okay, I can't be Western. I belong to a different culture. And I feel like you are having those internal like conflict because you're not sure, where do I belong? Where do I stand? And that's how I felt. Especially because outside in Italy, I was living a certain life. I was being this one particular person. But back home, I had to like adapt myself and be the traditional Bengali girl. So sometimes it was really, really tough.
Yeah.
There was a movie that talks about this. It's called "What Would People Say," which is a common phrase in every South Asian.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
South Asian culture, and there's this girl who's Pakistani and she lives in Norway. And so in like when she's not at home, when she's like at school, like she's like going to clubs, and then she has this white boyfriend, and one day she brings a white boyfriend at home and her father catches her.
Okay.
And what he does is that he tells her, okay, we're going straight to Pakistan, and he's trying to like brainwash her to be the traditional Pakistani girls. And I felt it was so interesting, that movie, because I feel like that's the reality of many of the women like us.
Yes.
And it's like you are put into this new country, you're supposed to be integrating, but then if you do something that is like outside of the norm of what's considered normal, then you're punished.
Right. You're right.
Yeah.
I see, again, this experience I've not had because I didn't grow up over there. I went as an adult woman. But I think from what I've seen in the movies, that seems like it. Everybody around you wants you to assimilate in the culture, but not too much. Right?
Yeah.
They want you to be, like in your case, Italian, just Italian enough, but not too much also. And then you kind of have to keep your, kind of dual identity. So that just seemed hard growing up as an adolescent and as, a teen, I think.
Yeah, and I do talk about it in my book, and I talk about how I would see my Italian friends have their kind of lifestyle. You know, they would go to the cinemas, do sleep over, they would meet after school, but I could not do that
Right.
because
School's
there was a perception.
correct. School's done. Come home, right home, right? Come home back.
Exactly. What would people say if you're like on the street with your friends? And in my head, I was like, but I'm not doing anything wrong.
True. You also did mention about your sister and about how you're comfortable talking with your sister in Italian. I just want, if this is something you can, it's a little bit. Do you think you and your sister, for example, grew up with the same kind of experience? Because sometimes siblings can grow up in the same country, but also have a different perspective towards that.
So I think we both had two different experiences.
Okay.
Because so I grew up in a time where I did not have anyone that looked like me, and I did not even have Bengali friends growing up.
Sure.
So all of my friends were Italian. And I feel like my experience of living in the UK, living now in Montreal, it gave me a different kind of experience because I can see it also in my circle of friends that I have people from different parts of the world. And with my sister, so when she grew up, she did have some Bengali friends, and I feel like she used to hang out a bit more with her Bengali friends.
Okay.
And now she lives in the UK, so she is surrounded by Bengali people nonstop.
Okay. So her experience,
Nonstop.
yes.
Yeah, so she is more immersed in the Bengali side, whereas I'm more in the outside, and I think I prefer it that way. I think it's better to have that balance rather than being too immersed in the Bengali side.
Okay.
Because in the UK, I feel like people have not advanced mentally, and it's a very closed mentality when you go to the UK when it comes to like living in certain areas. Because I live in Islam, which is full of like brown people, and like, you don't even need to know how to speak English because the person in the store speaks Bengali.
Yeah, correct. No, that's true for a lot of places, right? When I was in UK at Wembley, I think everybody over there could only hear Hindi everywhere, you know, in Wembley. I think.
Exactly. So her experience was a bit different, I would say. I think she feels more at home, maybe with the Bengali side, where I feel more at home with my Italian side. Okay, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's great. I wanted to always know this because you know how like there are two kids who can grow up in the same family and then grow up to have different personalities. I wanted to know how language acquisition and how language comfortability looks like. So in your case, like you said, yours was a more outwardly view of the world and languages, and in her case it was mostly Bengali because she kind of surrounded herself with that. That is truly amazing. Would you please tell us something about your book? I honestly, to be honest, I did not read much about it. I would like to know, and I would also want people to know about it.
Yeah, so my book is called The Discovering Your Identity, Rebirth from Interracial Struggle. And I pretty much talk about my experience growing up in Italy, being born in Italy as a South Asian woman. So I make a comparison between the Bengali culture and the Italian culture from a perspective of a child and a teenager. So I talk about these things that happened to me when I was going to school. For instance, like I went to a school that was strictly Catholic, and I would see nuns, and there was a church, there was a crucifix in the classroom, and me as a kid, I was wondering what that was, especially because I don't come from the same, let's say, the same religion. And then I talk about certain things such as dressing up or dressing to go to school. Like I always had to make sure that I was like super covered, dressed very modestly, but then I would see my high school friends, dressed in a certain way, and I always had to make sure that I was covered, things that you don't experience, you observe, and you just start to wonder. I talk about other things such as dating. So I remember my friends always used to tell me, yeah, you don't date anyone who's like outside of the community, not even inside the community. But then I would see my high school friends bringing their boyfriends on a Sunday lunch, and I was like, oh, okay, but how is it that it's normal over there, but it's not our side? So it was, and I grew up with that perception. What would people say? So everything I had to do it like secretly. And so I talk about that a lot in the book.
Okay, that's really interesting. Is it on sale in like the Indian subcontinent? Can you buy it on Indian Amazon?
You can buy it on Amazon, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'll
Yes.
definitely look into it. I will also put the name in the description because that sounds like something I would want to read. Because right, I am so interested. When you told me Italy, right? Because Italy for me, I've never heard it being a country where a lot of immigrants flooded. Maybe I'm unaware of it, but I've known of people going to the US, to Canada, to Australia, to these kind of countries. I also know that Germany took a lot of immigrants years ago.
Mhm.
So when you said that when you said Italy, I was like, wow. Like for me, firstly, Italy I've visited only once, but I will never ever forget that country. I tell my husband this that we have to go there again. I mean, I went 15 years ago with my family on a holiday, and everything about Italy I absolutely loved. I could totally see myself living there. So when you said, like I'm Italian, I was just like, wow, how does that work? So I'm very keen on just reading your experiences and also learning a little bit more about you in that journey.
There are so many Bengalis in Italy. It's actually crazy.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's actually crazy. And if you go now, you'll see them a lot in in souvenir stores selling
Okay.
souvenir stuff. Like there are many
See, I also
Italians.
visited 15 years ago, so maybe I wasn't, that well aware. So I maybe didn't keep my ears open. But I'm sure maybe I also visited places that were run by, Bangladeshis. So that's really good to know. I was totally unaware of this. You know how
There's
immigration takes
so
us to different parts of the world, right? And so much culture assimilation happens through that.
Yeah, you know what's so interesting? Like, I think the first flow of Bengali immigrants moved to Italy, I think in the 70s and in the 80s.
Okay.
And then Italy was like doing some like program for immigration. So there was a big flow of Bengalis moving there. Now, a lot of them also have moved to Spain. And it's so interesting because I went to Barcelona, I went to the souvenir store, and I recognized, I feel like there is a radar in you that you recognize when someone is from Bangladesh. So I could recognize the person was from Bangladesh. And then we started talking. It's like, yeah, I'm from Bangladesh. I live in Spain and so forth. And it was so funny. And then there are so many Bengalis also in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. In France, there are so many as well.
Germany, I was aware of. Honestly, I wasn't aware of the other countries. Germany, I was aware there are a lot of Afghanis and Bangladeshis over there.
Yeah. I'm telling you, like, we're everywhere.
Okay, so that means once if I'm not in Europe again, I should keep my ears open for Bengali. I'll pick up on some Bengali here or there.
Yes, okay. Even in Portugal, I remember there were so many. There's like taxi drivers, Uber drivers. It was so interesting.
That's amazing. Okay, I do have like a little one or two trivia questions to ask you just on your experiences now.
Yes.
Since you're a polyglot, when like there was a story I heard as a kid that if you want to know somebody's mother tongue or native tongue, and when they get scared the most, the first word that comes out of their mouth is from their native tongue, right? In your case, for you being a polyglot, what do you think is your heart language? What language stays in you? What language do you think about it all the time?
I think it's probably Italian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. So that means that is just a language that you're comfortable, thinking in, dreaming in.
Yeah, and even when I'm mad, I think the Italian side just comes out. Like even yesterday, I think I was driving and this lady, she was almost hitting her. I just started to like talk in Italian in my head. I actually was talking in Italian to her as well.
And from what it seems, right, I think just talking like, yelling in Italian, cursing in Italian just sounds beautiful. From what I've seen in movies, right, I think it just sounds musical, somebody doing that. That's amazing. And you still get angry, right? I agree. I always tell people this also, that for me also, in English, my high, heavy vocabulary comes out when I am angry. And a lot of that happens while driving in India as well, where I am just like, this is it. Today you're going to get a thesis in English from me. So I think yes, the language of anger, the language of this. When you're having a low day or you just want to watch something, what is your go-to content that you watch and what language generally is it in?
So there are two things that I do when I am low. So there is this again, it's in Italian. It's not an Italian show. There are these two YouTubers who are Italian and they make fun of a TV show. And so I like to watch that. Of course, they speak in Italian, so I like to watch it because I grew up in Italy and I get all the jokes, and so I'm able to laugh when I'm watching that. Otherwise, the other thing that I like to do is watch some shows from my teenagehood, which are of course in English. I would watch like let's say the OC, Smallville, Friends. Like I would just watch them when I'm like trying to go back to my high school time because they do bring me back to those good times. So that's what I do. Like I'm always like in between those two kind of
That's
worlds.
amazing. You know what? OC had my heart because I had just
So
stepped
good.
into college, and oh my God, Ryan and just
I
Adipodi,
know.
summer. I want to live that life, and just the
I
house they
know.
had on the beach. OC was everything. That was my dream. I thought if I ever move to the US, I'm going to move there.
You know what's so funny? I went to California last year, and I
Okay.
told myself I'm gonna go and visit every single place where they shot OC.
Did you?
I did. It's a private house now, and then there was me like a loser, like going up to in front of this house trying to take a picture. I actually did take a picture, and they did shoot the TV show there. Like it was honestly a dream coming true.
Wow, I never thought of it. I've visited California, but not the Orange County. But yes, these kind of things, especially as a
Yeah,
teenager, these memories are so special. They stay with you. That's amazing. So you also watch English content, like that is also your
yeah,
go-to, because I'm assuming that is your content from your late teenage years and high school, college years, right?
yeah. So OC was one thing I used to watch. Charmed.
Oh, of course, Charmed. Of course, they're doing a
Yeah.
reboot. Do you know that doing a reboot of Charmed? I heard, but I think they're making a movie out of it.
With who are they doing it?
No, not Alyssa Milano, not all those people, because I think one of
Then
them
no,
doesn't want to do it. I think they're doing it with young people, but they're bringing the show back.
then we don't have a reason to watch it then.
Did you ever watch The Ghost Whisperer by Jennifer Love Hewitt?
It rings a bell. I just don't remember what it was.
She just can see dead people, so she can communicate with them. And every episode there is like a new person. Then they get
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, I used to watch that one. I used to watch Dawson's Creek.
Oh, Dawson's Creek, of course, of course. It had Katie
Yes.
Holmes in it, right? Yes.
Yes. And then 9210.
90210. Oh my God! Wait, have you watched both though? There is a newer version. There's an older version also.
I watched both of them.
See, and that you're a true fan because there are very few people, I think, who've done both together. Okay.
You know what I'm watching right now? One Tree Hill. Did you watch it?
I have watched One Tree, but I also watched it 10 years ago, but watched the entire thing. And Chad Michael Murray, right? The actor. Yeah, he was in some other movie I watched right now. And I was just like telling my husband, I was like, he used to be so hot when he was younger.
Right? He used to be so cute. I mean, he still is, but he was so much
He's
better
so
before.
cuter, right? Exactly. All the
Yeah.
shows, right? They were just so good. And they had just the right mix of emotion, a little high school,
Yeah.
American life.
Yeah.
I loved all that. Like it was a great little
Yes.
package together.
Yes.
That's so amazing.
And we had a nice teenagehood.
We did.
That's
I feel like we lived in the golden age of content without having Netflix and these kind of things. You know why?
That's it.
Because there were no 50 subscriptions. Put
That's
on your
also used-
TV, you literally, for English, like I'm sure you had, I only had 3 channels in India then. There was Star World, Z Cafe, and there was again VH1, MTV, those kind of things. So that's it. And today there are 400, 500 subscriptions. Every
Yeah,
time
they-
somebody recommends me a show, it's on a different subscription.
Literally, what do you watch?
Exactly. That is why Netflix honestly is my go-to. If I can't find anything,
Okay.
I just put Friends on it. Maybe I also watch Office and Parks and Recreation. I like those those awkward mockumentary style, just like Modern Family, where they kind of break the fourth wall and look at the camera. I do like those kind of shows also. So they go in the background sometimes.
Nice.
Okay, Urmi, thank you so much. I know that we are almost hitting 43 minutes and you have your work day today, right? Plus you are busy today. So let me, kind of sum it all up. And thank you so much for taking out the time and, working with me. And, I know that you went a lot of back and forth when to do this. And it was so interesting. I am so going to buy your book. And when I do, I am going to text you and let you know because I've been looking for an interesting read. And what better read than reading somebody's book who you've met or spoken to, right? Then I can tell people that I've spoken to the author. So that I think would be the cherry on the cake right now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you
You're
so much.
sweet.
I really am sure everybody who watches it in India, young adults or just teenagers who are thinking of a life abroad to move or something. I know there's a lot of content out there, but I know somebody who did that in her late 20s. That for as a teenager to do that or something must be so hard. So I just hope that this, allows people to get a little understanding of how the world works and how languages work. But thank you so very much, and just thank you so much for being there.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You have a great day and we'll chat soon, okay? We'll definitely do this again because I'm sure there's so much more to talk about. We should do one episode to just talk about all the shows that we watched and we can
for
just
real.
exchange notes on how did you view it living in Italy and how are you living in India. And I think we should just do exchange notes on it.
I'll be so down.
That's great. Okay, we take care and you have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.
you.